Hello and welcome back to another exciting and inspiring episode of On Location with Zara Durrani, produced with the support of TELUS Story Hive. Currently, we're here on a beautiful summer sunny day in the heart of Kitsilano at a beautiful vegan restaurant, Folk Restaurant, and we're filming on their day off. Joining me is someone who I've been communicating with for the last little while. We've been trying to get her on the show, and we're so excited she could finally join us today to talk about wellness, well-being, self-care, and mental health. I'm talking about the founder of Wellness Talks, which is such a great name. Welcome, Esha Shoker.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Zara. I'm so glad that we finally got to connect as well.
I know, and you're just leaving. You're traveling soon, right?
Yes.
So we got you just before you jump on an airplane. Where are you off to?
Well, actually, not this time. Not an airplane. We're just going to Seattle.
Lovely.
But I came back from Japan. I think the first time we were trying to connect, that's where I was.
You know, Julian, my camera operator, was just in Japan for a month.
It's amazing.
So I feel like you're the second person today talking about Japan. Actually, third, including Julian and our first guest. I need to go back to Japan. I've only been at Narita Airport on my way to Bali, but I just was too worried to get lost in the city. I was by myself traveling, and I had like a 7-hour layover, but I'm so fascinated with Japan, with exploring Tokyo and the different food and culture.
Yeah.
So how was Japan?
It was amazing. Like you're saying, the culture is one that you have to experience while being there because it's so dynamic. There's so many facets to it. There's this beautiful history and richness and tradition, but then at the same time there's like spunk, with the anime culture. So it's just, and the food is just, I'm vegan, as you know, Zara, and this is probably hands down one of my favorite vegan vacations I've done.
Amazing.
Yeah,
wow.
a lot of vegan food.
And I hear you've been to Folk as well before.
Oh, hands down my favorite restaurant in Vancouver.
Okay, so if you're vegan, you need to come on down to Folk. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We had a great phone call, talking about the show and various things about mental health. And, you're a counselor. You've been working with individuals for quite some time, starting out first assisting individuals, overcoming addictions, and then now moving into more family and wanting to help improve relationships and teaching people how they can communicate better. So I have a lot of friends, as I was mentioning to you, who are therapists, who help individuals, who are teaching other people, whether they're going to school, how to become a therapist. And over the years, this is something I'm very fascinated by the work you folks do, because I think it takes a lot of bandwidth, emotional bandwidth to become a therapist, to be a counselor, to be a mental health professional, to give and support others as they're on their healing journey. So what inspired you to follow this field?
That's a good question. I would say probably first and foremost my own personal hardships.
Okay.
Growing up as a Punjabi Sikh woman in Surrey, although our community is vast there, but still growing up, there were expectations from parents. There were stressors that I felt, I wasn't able to openly express myself as I wanted to in my home. And I think the first experience I ever had with a counselor was in grade 8 myself. And I always, even as I carried on, graduated, and started off as a preschool teacher, and then I went on to be a child and youth care worker, I always thought about those experiences that I personally had with my high school counselors. And they helped me through trials and tribulations. They helped me understand how to navigate my strict parents and my upbringing, and just how I can find some freedom here and there.
Were you born in
Yeah.
Canada? Or were you born in
Yeah,
India?
I'm born in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. But even second generation Punjabi families can be this way, from my understanding personally and even professionally working with other clients of mine. So,
And I think there's
yeah.
nothing like personal experience and, you know, taking your own pain and seeing how you can
Yeah.
learn to communicate better. And, you know, this is something we were speaking about over the phone.
Yeah.
That, so I moved to Canada at 17, but I grew up traveling across Asia by the age of 7. We had lived in 7 different countries, and I do think that we learn, a child absorbs so much information from your family around you, like what you're allowed to talk about, what you're not allowed to talk about, you know, what things you just pretend are happening, and you just stay quiet, you don't speak up, you don't use your voice, you're not expressing yourself.
Yeah.
And add to it the fact, like, being a woman, you know, I'll just speak for myself, like, I'm sure perhaps your experience is different, but in overall, I have found, like, in our cultures, that for women to truly have a voice is, like, I feel so grateful that I live in Canada and I can have the liberties and freedom that I have in this country.
Yeah.
And, you know, being able to travel around the world, like the job that I have and the work that I do, because I know for sure back home in Pakistan, it's a different story, even though there are women in media and television, but I think that those opportunities are saved more for certain status.
Yes.
You know, and even then, so there's so many different politics, what you can say and not say, and how you show up in the
Exactly.
world, how much space you occupy, your tonality, how you speak.
Yeah, everything. There's a lot of expectations, right? I mean, generally, I think there's expectations from women, but then add that layer of a colored immigrant child, girl, I think the expectations are that much more, right? And we have to watch so many things. We're listening to things at home, then we're listening to things at school, and we're trying to find our place. So getting that help was so tremendously impactful, and it stayed with me, right? And so as I progressed and started studying more and learning more and working, I realized I want to do the same thing. And then I found myself in counseling school.
Isn't that beautiful how this
Yeah.
one person impacted you that
Yeah.
so much?
We are in touch today.
Oh my goodness, I love that.
I know.
Oh, that
It's
is
really
so
beautiful.
What a
Yeah.
full circle moment.
Yeah, yeah. So that's essentially the main influence. And then overall, helping people. I know it sounds cliche, but I always wanted to work in a profession where I'm helping. And that's why I started off working with kids, right? I was helping them, I was teaching them, assisting them, depending on the, needs. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. So you mentioned that, when we were speaking on the phone, how you were starting off helping individuals going through substance abuse issues. And that is certainly the backbone of, like, where you were starting. And now you're focusing more towards family, relationships, communications, which is so close to your heart, sounding like your story, where you come from. What do they say? Healer, heal thyself. Teacher, we teach what we know
Yes.
the most. So tell us about that, because I feel like when it comes to mental health and substance abuse and addictions, like those topics, especially in our city, are, coming. I came back from Paris. I was living out of the country in France for a couple of years before COVID. And it was very fascinating to return back, live downtown Vancouver, and noticing how the scenery had changed quite a bit. And, of course, with COVID, like, when individuals, people didn't have any other way of coping. They were turning to substances or misuse of alcohol or different things, because we were all in our little small apartments or homes, wherever we were. And it affected a lot of different people if you didn't have some sort of emotional community support. Everyone acted out in various ways.
Totally.
So tell us a bit about that part of your practice.
So I started off as, an addictions registered clinical counselor, and it was an eye-opening experience. You meet all sorts of people from all different backgrounds. And one thing I learned was the same way we say mental health does not judge, addiction doesn't either. It can affect anyone from any demographic. So initially, I was working with street entrenched, folks. Very tough population to work with because there's a lot of dynamics, a lot of issues, a lot of layers that we cannot even understand. We can try to, but unless you've lived in those people's shoes, I don't think we can fully understand the gravity of the pain they feel. They don't choose to be there. It's not a choice, right? It's just really unfortunate issues, traumas, stacked traumas, abuse, you know what I mean? There's just so many layers to it. And then, of course, concurrent disorders, so untreated mental health disorders, which then lead to people using substances or other things to cope, and then they end up there, right? But as that beginning of my career journey started to move forward, I found myself in a private addictions facility. And that is where I learned addiction does not judge.
100%.
There are folks highly educated, highly successful,
Highly functioning.
highly functioning.
I've had many people on my show,
Yeah.
I'm 10 years sober.
Yeah.
And
Same.
many people, like I know folks who are like deans of universities here at SFU and UBC and doctors, nurses, but also mothers and different. So I think that word can, sometimes people can have a particular idea of what an individual can look like and what that is, because you can be addicted to anything.
Correct.
Whether it is food, perhaps it's food for you.
Yep.
Eating too much or too little.
Yes.
It's in various ways that we're using, and you're the professional, so you're the one who has worked with individuals. So I'd love to hear from you that perhaps taking the stigma away of what that means, and and how, because different people are on their journeys of, I know that a lot of people are originally shocked when I share that, and it's something that is in my family, and it's like, people learn various ways of coping. Those are coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that I've had the support of an amazing community and like meetings and all of that. But it's a lot of the looking inward and learning to self-soothe, and perhaps a connection with the community or a higher power of your understanding.
Yeah. Well, one of the key things about, I would say, trying to understand how addiction doesn't judge is taking a look inwards into how am I functioning day to day. Let's just take a moment and think about how we function. Okay, Netflix.
Yeah.
Food, as you mentioned, right? Disassociation. We all do this to some level or degree. Well, that is the birthplace of addiction. That can be the birthplace of addiction, right? Gambling, right? Trying to escape. Like, I'm feeling something, I don't want to feel it. What can I do to make that go away, right? So,
do you think we live in a society that promotes that, to not feel, whether it is through that or through taking a pharmaceutical or through taking a pill? Like, I was reading this book by Marianne Williamson. I know there's a place for that, right? Like, there's completely a place for that. But I was reading this book by Marianne Williamson, Tears to Triumph, and she talks about, and I do think that that's what a lot of people who are in recovery, one sort or the other, learning to sit with your pain, that a lot of the ancient traditions, they talk about, walking through the fire. the journey of like from being a young adult to a full adult, you know, like becoming a warrior, like finding that strength within you and knowing that whatever may be happening outside of you is not going to destroy you, but like finding and connecting with that inner resilience.
Yeah, and I really do feel, well, you asked, do you feel our, community or society culture, does it
Promote.
distract or whatever, or does it distract us from connecting with those emotions, those feelings, and does it promote escaping? I think yes, for sure. There's no doubt about it. Like we can escape by just taking our phone in our hand. There you go, we've escaped, right? And we can keep escaping for as long as we want. It is our responsibility, personally, it is our responsibility to connect with that. Because if we don't, it is going to turn into something else.
Yes.
Now I'm not going to get into logistics of what that means and what it looks like, but I'm sure if we think about it hard enough, we can go back in our lives and think, I got really angry that one day and I flipped out on somebody in a lineup. Why did I do that? Well, it's because of unresolved feelings of something, some discontent, and not dealing with it, not talking to a professional about it, right? And so if we don't deal with those emotions, then they will come up in other forms, in other ways, whether it's through anger, irritability, or escaping as a way to cope, right? So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, completely.
Yeah.
So I noticed that you practice EFT. Tell us about that. I've had an EFT practitioner on the show, and I was introduced to EFT before COVID, but I really started using it during then, and like really sitting with like, so I had just, I've talked about on the show before, I was living in Paris. I came back to Vancouver with a pair of jeans, 2 sweaters, and a jacket.
Yeah.
You know, and I was here on a return trip ticket. I was going to go back to Paris, and then COVID happened. And then going through the myriad of feelings that came up, you know, from every spectrum that you can imagine, as did we all, right? As did we all. But like sitting and giving yourself permission to feel. So I love that I could find these amazing YouTube videos. Like I think his name is Brad Yates, and there's different apps that you can do for that. So tell us about that, and that's something that you use with your clients.
Yeah, so I use emotionally focused work.
Okay.
So emotional focused therapy, which is, I would say the work was created by Sue Johnson, right? And
which I totally
that's okay
compared to the EFT, the emotional
I think you're
freedom.
Thinking yes, you're thinking the tapping stuff. Yeah. So I got additional training in EFT. So RCC, registered clinical counselors, we generally have basic training in all modalities. That's what happens in our master's program. Afterwards, we decide which area or which modality really calls to us, and then we specialize in it. So this is one of my specializations. So EFT, I got training in it initially to work with families and couples. And it's because I just absolutely love the way it's broken down, right? So you work with them individually, then you work with them as a pair, then you work with them as a family unit. So there's like components and steps to it in terms of like, helping the family system work better, right? And the main focus of EFT, and I now apply it with my individuals as well, is allowing yourself to feel whatever it is you're feeling, and then learn to express it.
Because the feeling part can be so different than expressing.
Correct.
And I guess that's similar to the other EFT that I see here. EFT, right away my brain goes to that, which I really, really love.
Yeah.
But it sounds very fascinating because the fact that you started when we started our conversation
Yeah.
today with talking about your own family dynamics. So looking as an outsider, it's really, you know, the whole story of like you healing that part
Yes.
and now teaching others that how they can communicate effectively.
Correct.
And, you know, especially when you're working with families and children and parents,
Yes.
you're helping shape the future.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
fascinating because we've had folks on the show who are therapists and counselors, and we talk about love and romance and dating because that's like my area. I'm single, you know. I love talking about that because I do find like, you know, communicating, expressing your needs is so important. But you're working on the other side of it's like, how do we keep things going
Yes.
after you've had the beautiful wedding and all the things?
Yes.
How do we learn to respectfully communicate? So tell us, I know it's in the short amount of time that we have here today, what are some of the tools that you share with your clients that how they can implement at home, but perhaps in their work lives as well, how to be an effective communicator?
Okay, so one of the first things I work on, whether it's couples, whether they're family that are coming to me, or even individuals, is you can only best communicate if you know really truly what you're actually thinking and feeling about whatever that topic is. So first and foremost, you have to either write it out or record yourself talking and express, let it out, figure out exactly what you feel and think about whatever it is, whatever the topic is, right? So, for example, if a conflict arises, which they do, it happens, right? Take a moment, pause, and think about what do I really feel? And with whatever I share, what impact is that sharing going to have on this dynamic, on this relationship, on this family unit?
Which in the moment when
Very hard.
our ego is involved, and it's people we love the most.
Yes,
They
of
know
course.
where our buttons are. They know how to push them and
Yes.
how to not react.
Yeah.
That is like the magic component. And, you know, it's so fascinating. Even if I take 30 to 60 seconds, no joke, 30 to 60 seconds to be like, okay, this is my intention for the day. If something comes up, please help me not be reactive. Help me take a step back. Help me. But the days where I'm rushing,
Yeah.
I don't have that space in between to
do
have
that.
the exhale breath.
Yeah.
So, you know, that exactly what you're saying. But what I found so fascinating in what you said is like get really clear about what you want to say.
Yes.
Because otherwise you're going to end up saying something that you will regret, whether it is at place of your work or with your friend or with your partner or to your children.
Exactly. And so asking your partner, asking your mom, your child, whomever, give me 1 second. Give me a minute. I'll be back. There's nothing wrong with that. If anything, that's something I promote.
Okay.
Time out, breaks. Let me think about this, and I'm gonna come back to this conversation. Instead of sitting there, feeling uncomfortable, festering, trying to figure out, and then blah, blah, blurting,
Yes.
right? And then finding, now we're in this really tricky, muddy area. How do we get out of it? So this is one of the tips that I do give, and I help my clients figure out how to do this in a more fluid manner, you know, and whether it's with colleagues, families, whatever. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the fact that you said that you can even leave like a voice note, so something that I do. So the individual I had on earlier, she's one of my closest friends, lives in relocated to Germany.
Okay.
And we leave each other voice notes.
Yes.
And we call them our podcasts.
Oh, I love it.
So with whatever is happening in our lives, and we could be like, I could be traveling on the road, or she's at Oxford, or speaking at this summit or that conference or whatever. And sometimes even as you're saying it, you can hear your inner critic going like, oh my God, this
There
sounds
you
so
go.
childish. But you need to release
That's right.
the heat.
That's
You
right.
need to release the and sometimes I do that with even leaving a voice message to myself. Or
Correct.
the new iPhone with it gives you a journal prompt. It asks me every day, do you want to journal on how your day is going? So on the days, I love doing journaling when I can, but mostly I do the 5-minute journal where I write out my affirmations and my intention and my gratitude. But it's learning to, and for those individuals who've gone through the don't speak, don't feel, don't share, as a child, in the heat of the moment when you're being triggered or when someone's done something that you're just out of your body, and you're like, I don't even know how I'm feeling.
Exactly, Zara.
I
You
don't
go
know
into
what's
freeze
going
or
to
flight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then those are two very common initial responses. And this practice that you're doing, that so many other people I know who do as well, helps us connect again with our emotional self. And that is what's going to tether us for the rest of this life that we have. It's almost, I would say, as strong as part of our survival mechanism. We need to learn to do it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So that even if you don't have the time to sit down and journal, you can leave yourself a voice note and get it all out.
Yep, get it all out.
Without judgment.
Correct.
Whatever's on your mind, like get it all out. Like, have you heard of Artist's Way?
No.
Julia Cameron, she introduced me to this idea. I mean, I haven't met her personally.
Right.
To the idea of the brain dump. So you wake up first thing in the morning when I have time, so don't think I'm not a saint. When I have time, pen to paper. So she says, like, there's something magical about holding pencil, pen, whatever, 3 pages of paper, whether it is grocery list, someone you're upset at, and writing as if no one's going to read, because we what is the word? We edit ourselves because we're afraid of, if someone reads it, they're going to think I'm a really bad person because I'm having these feelings about my mom, dad, sister, brother, or whoever.
But you're not a bad person. Nobody is.
Yes.
And we are all humans, and we've all had those thoughts and feelings. So that's one beautiful thing that all therapists and counselors do. We normalize those icky thoughts, those weird feelings. That's why coming to counseling is just such a beautiful experience, right? Because you're in this space, that space is being held, and you know that by the end of it, you're gonna feel lighter, and you can go on with the rest of your day. If you can't come in to do counseling for whatever reason, because sometimes there are economic drawbacks, and I understand that not everybody has benefits. That's something we talked about on the phone too, right? Then utilize these types of tools on your own at home and notice the difference.
And then it's also so much of the fact that we're spending money and eating well, or who can, or going to the gym or personal training. I think of so when I came back from COVID and when things started back up, I saw a therapist on and off for 2.5, 3 years, because my mother had passed away. I had a breakup. I'd moved back. It's like all these different things, and realizing that, and I was going almost on a weekly basis at times. And sometimes to support me, my therapist, just for me, like I was very grateful, was available, in the evenings for a Zoom session, or she would be traveling and I needed support, so we would do a call at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. at night, and it just worked out, and I felt so, so grateful. And it helped just release a lot of that charge. And it's that internal space of how you're showing up and taking more ownership of your life. So it's the inner workout.
Yes,
You know, the inner workout, how we can show up. So I feel like I'm a big, even when I'm dating, I feel like I always ask, do you have a therapist? Are you seeing someone
Great question.
for mental health support?
Yeah.
Because how can you show up in your life
Oh,
at our age
yeah.
if you don't have that additional tools or support?
Yes, yes, and it is. I would say it's become normalized now. So I think you would agree too, right? To that that when we're speaking amongst just people we meet, you know, in social settings, almost everybody I meet these days has a therapist.
Yeah.
And I love that. I'm like, finally. We still got more work to do. There's still stigma behind it, but I'm noticing more and more.
100%.
Yeah.
And knowing about different forms of therapy and so for individuals who are watching right now, because their time's coming to a close, I would like to talk a bit about what you specialize in at the moment and what are majority of your clients like.
Okay, yeah. So I have a few areas of specialization. One of them is ICBC counseling, Zara. So one of the things I started off with was ICBC and addictions work. They were kind of coincidingly, kind of, you know, I started them off. Yeah.
So like personal injuries.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So ICBC, for those who know, if you get into a motor vehicle accident, you are immediately entitled to 12 clinical counseling sessions, along with other therapies as well, RMT, physio, etc. So if you ever find yourself in an accident, if you were the person who hit or you got hit, it doesn't matter. They understand that motor vehicle accident trauma goes both ways.
And then it can put so much fear inside of you to get back on the road and be traumatized of even being in a car.
That's right. And so that's a lot of my clientele base are actually their ICBC clients. And then I would say it's about maybe 40% ICBC. So that's pretty hefty there. And then I treat individuals who are experiencing stress, burnout, financial stress, general mood disorders, whether it's anxiety, depression, you know.
You know, talking about financial stress, that was something we discussed over the phone. It's like, you know, certainly some of the things like living in Vancouver. I love, love, love our city. I don't think I could live anywhere else in Canada. At least I say that now because I love our seawall. I live downtown. But you know, you're certainly paying for it. And then talk about like a single income household.
Correct.
And which is like mine, you're like always working. So either people say to me, oh my God, you're so inspiring. You're working all the time. This is amazing. All the projects you're on, or people will look at my workload and be like, oh my God, I feel anxiety just imagining how you work. But you have to, the way things are set up here, right? So it's like Zara, if you want, and that can, you know, I mean, this may be a little bit heavy, but it's like a couple of years ago, not someone in my immediate circle, but someone who I had known as an acquaintance in the periphery. And this individual, before Burrard Bridge, had the, how would you say, call it? They put to prevent people from jumping off the bridge.
Oh, the barrier?
So, yes,
correct.
yes.
Yeah.
This individual, because of financial difficulties after his divorce, and may he rest in peace, he just couldn't take it anymore, and it was due to financial stress.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that we do as clinicians, right? We treat people who have suicidal ideation. And it's one of the most important parts of my work. And yes, I have seen clients, and I do currently have clients who struggle with this, right? Due to hardships, loss, right? Whether it's work loss, loved ones who they've lost, right? Any sort of loss. It can be extremely exhausting, mentally, emotionally, and physically, right? Grief is not easy to go through. So yeah, that's definitely part of the work as well, right? And with that comes, like, you know, individuals, clients who come to me for pain management, because they know my background with addictions and again ICBC, so that is an area that I do know a lot about, and I do help my clients figure out ways to manage it in a healthy way, right? So one of the things I did after my addictions work was I worked with a medical practice in Abbotsford. The doctor who owns that clinic is a family friend of mine, and he brought myself on, and an occupational therapist on, and a nurse on. So this was one of the first clinics that I saw that were run in this manner and fashion. And so that's where I was able to help people with pain management and, you know, allow them to just have that space to talk about, I'm in so much pain, that's why I'm drinking. I'm in so much pain, that's why I'm overusing Tylenol or whatever it is, right? So stress, pain management, burnout, financial stress, you know, and then of course, like we were talking about in the phone, family relationships, how to strengthen relationships, how to strengthen bonds with other people. Like I have clients who come to me who have a hard time making friends. So that's something.
And which can feel so lonely.
Oh,
yeah.
And as an adult, trying to make friends is very different from trying to make friends as an adolescent or a
100%.
child.
When you're in your 20s,
Yes.
it's so different.
Yeah.
I say that my close friends now, it's like less than 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think over the years, like you also learn to be mindful of your energy, and you'll have a lot of acquaintances and
right.
people who are on the outside, or people think that they're like, oh my God, you're my closest friend, and I would be fascinated because I don't feel like that with that individual,
Right.
but because I make space for them to feel
Yeah.
comfortable and feel
Yeah.
seen.
Yeah.
So that's really, but you know, we all have different needs and different levels of depth or connection that we
Correct.
desire.
Correct.
Well, that sounds really beautiful. Before I let you go, I do
Yeah.
want to ask, because you're giving so much to others and creating all this space for individuals to heal and learn to better their own communication skills, but also healing from past traumas. How are you taking care of yourself, and what are you doing for self-care?
Well, thanks for checking in on me with that question, Zara. You know, I've actually had my clients ask me this question too. Like at the end of the session, hey, Esha, are you okay? I feel like I dumped a lot on you. And I'm
Yeah.
always like, oh, bless. You know, we have this training, many years of training for a reason, Zara, right? So we understand we cannot practice, we have to practice what we preach. Sorry. That is how I take care of myself. So whatever tools that I'm sharing with my
So
clients.
what does that look like? If you could just break it down for me quickly.
Okay, well, first and foremost, I have a self-care practice.
And what does that include?
Okay, and that includes
I'm a bit nosy.
That's okay. That's okay. It's totally
Yeah.
fine. So you know, you use that word bandwidth earlier in our interview, and I was like, that's a word I've been using a lot as well recently. And when I'm talking about my work, I do think, generally speaking, counselors, we definitely got maybe a heavier, longer bandwidth than others, than the average person, to be able to listen to sorrows, pain, etc. for hours on a day, right? That bandwidth is built over time, right? Through training,
Your
through
training,
experiences,
school.
right? And life experiences and work experiences, right? So even though we have that bandwidth, we need to take breaks. So you know how you were talking about the 30, 60-second just break to yourself, whether it's before you respond or in between interviews? Well, I do that consciously throughout the day. So I take full, solid breaks. So when I say I'm turning everything off, I mean I'm turning everything off. So I believe that sensory can put us into overdrive.
100%.
Right? So TV off, phone off. I'll even shut the windows to make it less, we live in the city, heart of the city, so to make it less noisy, right? and I will literally put on some sort of music I like, and I will just be.
That's beautiful.
Sometimes I'll do breath work, not always, but I will just be with myself. I'll walk, I'll do some cleaning, but I don't engage in any sensory activity.
I love that.
Yeah.
It makes me think of like float tanks.
Correct. Very similar,
like
actually.
Letting go of, all the light, this, and that. And so you can just, and that can bring up a lot too.
Yeah.
And just sitting, not thinking of anything active meditation-wise. Like I teach meditation and yoga as well because I don't have enough on my plate.
I saw that.
But I actually get so much from it because when I'm teaching, it reminds me that's what I need to do.
Correct.
So you cannot give something or ask people to do something that you're not doing. And because when I'm verbalizing, I'm like, yes, that's what I need to do more of.
Yeah.
So it's very fascinating. Maybe I'm like reverse engineering it, but it's like, a couple of days ago, I was filming 3 different episodes at 3 different summer festivals. In between, I taught a yoga class. And, my camera operator and everyone was like, oh my God, you're just like, this is like a lot. But that 50 minutes, 50, of me going in, lighting incense and music, like Tibetan bowls, and they have some bowls there too. And guiding people through that just allowed me to so much have that breath of like, and for me to remember that, okay, yes, you're running around, but you have to like just breathe, being in here, and everything else is going to come together.
Yeah.
Because in our industry, there's a lot of like need for that mindfulness, and because we work long hours in film and television industry, like having a 12-hour day is considered a piece of cake.
Yeah.
So it's normally 14 to 16-hour days. I mean, it's not a big production like this one over here, but normally on the American shows that come into town, like you're looking normally a 10-hour day with a lunch break is normally an 11 to 12-hour day. You add travel time to and back, you're looking at 15-hour days, 4 to 5 days a week. So like a lot of individuals in the film industry need the support that you're offering.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
And there's ways that you can find that 1 or 2 minutes. If you have the ability to and you have a vehicle, go sit in it, turn everything off, close your eyes. That's it. That's all we need.
100%.
That's all we need. So I do that consciously throughout the day. I'm a spiritual therapist. So anytime I finish a session, I always will say a little something in my mind and my heart for that client.
That's beautiful.
And for the work that we did.
That's so lovely.
Yeah, and they know that. They know that I usually express it. Sometimes we'll even do it together.
That's so
we'll
lovely.
close our eyes and say a little something, and then it's like, okay, whatever was discussed, we're letting it go, and give me the strength to carry on and enjoy the rest of the day. So
beautiful.
Things like that, and of course walking, movement, mindful walks is what I call them. So not walking and doing this, phone away, and just observing, like nice old school going for a walk.
Does that exist? When I was in Hope Slide area with no connection. Well, those are some great tips.
Yeah.
I truly appreciate you taking the time to come out here
Thank
and
you, Zara,
join
for
us
having
today. And I'm glad we finally made it happen before you head out. Have a great time in Seattle. Enjoy a beautiful summer here in Vancouver. And we'll share information on how folks can connect with you, your social media, as well as your website. Thank you so much for joining us, Esha.
Thank you, Zara, for having me.
My pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you. And thank you all for watching, for tuning in. If you found this inspiring, do please let us know. Until next time, I'm your host, Zara Durrani. You're watching On Location with Zara, produced with the support of Tell a Story Hive, and I'll catch you soon.